Hey everyone, Kivemi here with another Reddit story. Today's is about a young woman who, after years of being her family's financial safety net, decided to take back what was rightfully hers. It's one of those stories that really keeps you listening. Settle in, enjoy the Minecraft in the background, and let's get into it. The title is, My Family Took My Generosity for Granted, so I took back everything I ever gave them. I never imagined I would be the one to tell this story. But here I am, having spent nearly a decade and a half as an emotional punching bag and personal bank for my family. My name is Alice, and this is the story of how I finally reclaimed my life. Let's start at the beginning. My sister Clara has always been my parents' favourite, even though she's 4 years younger than me. She possessed a natural charisma and carefree attitude that I lacked. I was always the reserved and cautious one. She was a spendthrift, never considering the consequences because someone, usually me, would always come to her rescue. Meanwhile, I meticulously saved every penny, working part-time jobs all through high school and university. After graduating with a degree in software engineering, I landed a great job in Seattle. 3 years ago, Clara decided to pursue her creative passions, which primarily involved working part-time at a boutique owned by a family friend and creating lifestyle content for social media. Despite being 25, she still lived at home and didn't contribute to the household. In stark contrast, since I was 22, I had been sending my parents $100 every month to help with their mortgage. You'd think my financial support would earn me some respect, but you'd be wrong. Instead, I was criticised for being too frugal, for my solitary lifestyle, and for not being more supportive of Clara's artistic journey. When I bought a new car after driving a decade-old sedan, my mother called it a wasteful indulgence. My father accused me of betraying the family when I moved into my own apartment. Still, I kept sending them money. I kept hoping they would eventually see I was the one who had done the right thing, and they would be proud. The final straw came 8 months ago, when my parents announced a 2-week trip to Costa Rica to celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary. I was genuinely happy for them. They had talked about this for so long. "We're bringing Clara with us," my mum said over Sunday dinner. I looked up from my plate, confused. She explained that Clara needed a change of scenery for her blog, and the photos would be incredible. "What about me?" I asked, my dad shifting uncomfortably. "Clara needs this right now," he replied. "She's been so emotionally drained thinking about her future." I offered to pay for my own ticket, but my mum shook her head. "Honey, we can only afford to take one of you girls." A cold dread settled over me as she continued. "Besides, I know how you are on trips, all stressed about schedules and staying on budget. Clara will be much more fun without you around. Plus, you can afford to go on vacation whenever you want." I sat there in stunned silence as they continued to plan, discussing which eco-lodges Clara had found on Pinterest and the activities she wanted to try. No one asked about my preferences or what I would like to do. I felt completely invisible. That night, I went back to my apartment and took stock of my life. For nearly a decade, I had been paying my parents' mortgage. I had bought Clara her car when her old one broke down. I had covered countless family dinners, holiday gifts, and unexpected expenses. When my parents wanted new furniture and appliances, I had essentially furnished half their house. And what was the return on that investment? A family that saw me as nothing more than a walking ATM, too uptight and boring to deserve a spot on their dream trip. My plan began to form the next morning. First, I needed to know the full extent of my financial contributions. I spent the entire weekend poring over my bank statements, credit card bills, and payment records. I created a spreadsheet that would have impressed my finance professors, meticulously logging every purchase I had made for my family. The numbers were staggering. On top of the $110,000 in mortgage payments, there was an additional $5,000 in direct purchases. The new stove was $3,200. The living room set cost $1,500. I had even taken over payments for Clara's $19,000 auto loan after she defaulted. I had paid for her laptop, her camera equipment, her designer clothes, and her medical bills when she didn't have insurance. It added up. I had also been covering smaller expenses that, when combined, were massive. Sunday dinners where I always picked up the check, grocery runs when my mum said they were low on food, gas money for Clara when she was unemployed, and presents for their friends and extended family. I had become the family treasurer, even paying for my parents' golf club memberships and spa days. Looking at those figures, I felt a mix of validation and horror. Vindicated because it proved my feelings were justified. I had been financially propping up this family for years. Horrified because I couldn't believe how naive I had been, how much I had allowed myself to be taken advantage of. The most painful part was remembering all the times they had made me feel guilty for not giving more. My mother had called me selfish when I hesitated to co-sign Clara's loan. My dad said I'd forgotten my roots when I suggested they create a budget instead of calling me for emergency funds. For years, I had internalized their judgment and neglected my own needs. When was the last time I bought something for myself without feeling guilty? When was the last time I took a trip without worrying about a family emergency that would require my money? As I drove past my childhood home that Sunday, I saw it with new eyes. The outside was well kept, the yard immaculately landscaped. Clara's perfectly clean car was in the driveway. No one living there looked like they were struggling. They were living a lifestyle they couldn't afford because they knew someone, me, would always be there to break their fall. Meanwhile, my own apartment was small and functional, with second-hand furniture. I had been living like a college student to support my family's upper-middle-class life. The contrast was sickening. On Monday morning, I called my HR department and asked about long-term remote work. To my surprise, they were open to the idea and were already expanding their operations in a different state. The conversation opened up possibilities I hadn't considered. I could live anywhere, in a new city where no one knew me as Clara's sister or the responsible daughter. I could form new friendships based on who I was, not what I could provide. I began researching alternative tech hubs with more affordable living costs. All my searches kept pointing to Portland, Oregon. It had a thriving tech scene, was a hub for outdoor recreation, and housing costs were reasonable. I had only visited once for a conference, but I remembered falling in love with the mountains. I had never considered moving there because it felt so far from my family's needs. Now, that distance was a benefit, not a flaw. Next, I needed to understand my legal standing. I found and scheduled a meeting with an attorney who specialised in family law and asset recovery. I came with pictures, receipts, and my meticulously detailed spreadsheet. "This is very thorough," she remarked, scanning my documents. "Most people don't keep records like this." "I've always been obsessive about finances," I said. "And I'm glad I scan and file everything, because what I learned about gift law was both fascinating and frustrating." She explained that unless you formally transfer ownership of an item, you legally maintain it as a loan or temporary use, even if you bought it as a gift. In family relationships, formal contracts are rarely used. Everything is based on unspoken agreements. The challenge is proving intent, she explained. It can get messy if your relatives claim the items were unconditional gifts. I showed her documented emails and texts. "Look at this exchange about the new refrigerator. My mum texted, 'Thanks for covering this until we can pay you back.' And here's my dad saying he'd make it up to me with his bonus." The lawyer smiled. "This changes everything. If they acknowledge these as loans or temporary assistance, you have a much stronger case for reclaiming the property." For the first time in years, I felt empowered. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I had been a victim of systematic exploitation, and I had a right to get back what was mine. I started making concrete plans. I looked into moving companies that specialised in sensitive relocations, the kind needed when families are splitting up. I found one with excellent reviews and set up a consultation. The relocation coordinator, Patricia, was kind and understanding. "We see this more often than you'd think," she said. "Adult children who've been supporting parents and need to reclaim their contributions. The key is having proper documentation and moving quickly to avoid confrontations." "How quickly?" I asked. "Ideally, everything out within 24 to 48 hours, she replied. "The longer it takes, the more opportunity for interference or legal complications." I scheduled the move for the Wednesday after my family was scheduled to fly out. That would give me a full day to oversee everything and make sure nothing was missed. The hardest part was acting normally at the last few family dinners before their trip. I listened to them discuss their itinerary, Clara's excitement over photo ops, and their guesses about what parts of Costa Rica they would visit. No one asked about my life, my job, or how I felt about being excluded from such a significant family event. During one particularly agonizing meal, my mum showed me pictures of an eco-lodge they had reserved. "I'm in love with it," she gushed. "It looks lovely," I said, and I meant it. "Clara found it on a travel site. The rooms are small, but the location is perfect." My dad chimed in. "We almost upgraded to a suite that could fit 3 people, but it was just too expensive." The nonchalant way he said it told me everything I needed to know about my place in this family. I was, at best, an afterthought, and at worst, a financial resource. In the meantime, Clara had been posting non-stop on social media, pictures of new outfits, screenshots of Instagram posts from the places they would visit, and countdowns to their departure. Friends left dozens of likes and comments, saying how happy they were for her and how much they would miss her. No one knew I had been left behind. No one was mentioning how much they would miss me. I began my research. I reviewed every major purchase I'd made for them since their refrigerator had died 4 years prior. I had the receipts, and it was rightfully mine. This included the dining room table and chairs, the washer and dryer, Clara's MacBook Pro, the new living room TV, and about 30 other items totaling nearly $50,000. I consulted with my attorney one more time to confirm my rights. It turned out that unless you specifically transfer ownership with a legal document, you still own the item you purchased as a gift. I was lucky, as most families don't sign gift papers. Next, I found a beautiful apartment in Portland. Oregon had always been a dream state, but I'd never considered it because I felt a strong need to be close to my family. Now it had everything I had ever wanted: mountains, outdoor recreation, and a booming tech scene. I gave my notice at my current apartment, arranged for movers, and started looking for new positions in Portland, all while continuing my remote work. Everything just clicked into place, as if the universe was finally on my side. My final family dinner was 2 weeks before their departure. They were ecstatic, showing me their travel plans and the new clothes Clara had bought on my mum's credit card. No one asked how I was doing. "Be sure to take plenty of pictures," I said, a genuine smile breaking through months of forced expressions. "Oh, we will," Clara chirped. "I'm going to get so much content out of this. My follower count is going to explode." "I'm sure it will," I said. Tuesday morning they departed. As we loaded their bags into my dad's car, I said goodbye from the driveway. As soon as their taillights disappeared around the corner, I pulled out my phone and made a call. "Hi, this is Alice Mitchell. I'd like to confirm the pickup for tomorrow morning." The moving company I hired was a master of sensitive relocations. They were quick, efficient, and didn't ask questions. I had a detailed inventory of all the items I'd purchased, along with photos and receipts. The lawyer had even created an official ownership claim document in case there were future disputes. On Wednesday, the truck arrived, and they meticulously removed every single family gift I had purchased. They carefully handled the refrigerator, dishwasher, and the washer-dryer set. The furniture was expertly wrapped and loaded. Even small items like the coffee maker, blender, Clara's laptop, and camera equipment were carefully packed away. By Thursday evening, my parents' house looked as if it had been hit by the world's most selective tornado. Everything my parents or Clara had bought for themselves, including all the family photos, remained on the walls, but the large appliances were gone, replaced by empty rooms with dangling cords and holes. The old sofa and coffee table were back in the living room, but the TV and entertainment centre were gone. The dining room now had the small table and 4 chairs they had stored in the garage. I felt a complex mix of emotions as I walked through the house for the last time. It was gratifying to see the physical evidence of my contributions over the years. But there was also a profound sadness. By removing myself from their everyday lives, I was also walking away from a house that held decades of memories. I stood for a moment in Clara's room, staring at the empty space where her desk had been. I had furnished it with a new desk, chair, and lamp when she started community college, hoping she would have a dedicated study space. She had mostly used it to display her makeup. Now her shaky old desk from middle school was back, with her laptop perched precariously on top of it. I had almost left the laptop, but it felt too intimate, too tied to her job. Now, looking at the scene, I wasn't sure if I'd been generous enough. I went into my parents' bedroom and saw the holes where their new dresser and nightstands had been. They were back to using the same worn-out furniture they had for 20 years. The stark difference was impossible to ignore. I spent the most time in the kitchen. The white builder-grade refrigerator from 1999 was now in the middle of the room, a relic that barely served the family even when I was in high school. The countertops were bare without my coffee machine, blender, and stand mixer. They had even brought back the microwave from their old apartment, which now sat on the counter and took up valuable space. It wasn't lost on me that this kitchen had been the site of countless family meals where I had been made to feel guilty or ungrateful. It looked exactly as it had before my contributions, the kitchen of a working-class family with outdated appliances and limited counter space. I took pictures of everything, not out of malice, but for documentation. For legal reasons and in case my relatives tried to claim I'd taken more than I paid for, I needed photographic evidence of the condition of the house as I left it. I took one last tour of the living room before I left. They had dug out an old couch from the garage with a fading floral print my mum had always hated. There was a wobbly coffee table with ring stains and a shaky side table. The guest bedroom's small old TV, which I'd replaced, was back in its place. The room felt frozen in time, a reminder of their financial situation before my support. Sitting there, I remembered spending hours on the old couch with my family, watching movies or helping Clara with her schoolwork. Those memories were now tainted by the knowledge that my family had viewed my contributions as obligations rather than gifts. I knew that I would likely never see this house again, or if I did, our relationship would be completely different. Even if we reconciled, which felt highly unlikely, I would never again be the person they called when they needed money. My financial security would no longer be sacrificed for their convenience. It felt as if taking my things out of the house had stripped away not just its functionality, but its potential. A middle-class house lived in by middle-class people, living a middle-class life. It wasn't inherently bad, but it was certainly not the upper-middle-class luxury they had grown accustomed to. I locked the door, slid the key and a note I had written into the mail slot, and walked away. I had officially closed that chapter of my life. The note on the kitchen counter was short and to the point. Please be advised that I have retrieved all the items I have purchased for the family over the years. I have receipts for everything removed. Copies of the paperwork have been placed on the counter for your reference. I have relocated to Portland and will not be returning. You don't need to worry about the mortgage payments I've made. I've calculated that my contributions to your house over the years exceed the value of the items I've taken, so consider us even. I hope you had a wonderful vacation. P.S. Clara, I'm no longer going to pay for your lifestyle. You should probably get a job. Your laptop is in your room. Saturday morning, I loaded my U-Haul trailer with my personal belongings and drove away. As I drove, a weight lifted off my shoulders, as if I were shedding years of resentment and disappointment. My family returned from Costa Rica on Sunday. At 11:37 p.m, my phone started ringing. That evening, I was assembling furniture in my new Portland apartment, real furniture I had purchased for myself with my own money. I ignored the calls. The barrage continued. From my mom, dad, Clara, and even some extended relatives who had apparently joined the cause, all of them went to voicemail. I listened to the messages on Monday morning. My mom was hysterical. Alice, what have you done? The house is empty. How could you do this to us? We're your family. My dad's message was a mix of fury and confusion. As expected, Clara's was pure drama. This is theft, Alice. You can't just take things because you paid for them. They were gifts. You've ruined everything. How am I supposed to work without my computer? You're destroying my career before it even starts. Each of the 19 voicemails was more venomous than the last. They were all focused on what I'd taken, not on what I'd given. They never mentioned the hurt of being left behind on their trip. I blocked all their numbers and deleted the messages. On Tuesday, the lawyer I had consulted called me. My parents had reportedly filed a police report for stolen goods, even after my attorney had faxed all the paperwork. Your daughter has receipts for everything, the officer had supposedly told my dad. She paid for it. She owns it. This is a civil matter at best, and frankly, she has a stronger case than you do. On Wednesday, my inbox was flooded with emails, long, rambling messages full of emotional manipulation and guilt trips. My mum's letter lamented how embarrassed she was that the neighbours could see the state of the house. My dad's email shifted focus to the cost of replacing everything. Clara's email was a masterpiece of self-centeredness, describing how my selfish actions were negatively affecting her mental well-being and creative flow. I skimmed them and set up an auto-delete filter. I was done being the recipient of their emotional baggage. By Friday, I had started my new job at a tech startup in Portland. It was exciting and challenging. My colleagues were kind and my boss took a genuine interest in me as an employee and my professional growth. My salary was the highest it had ever been, and for the first time as an adult, I was free to spend every cent on myself. 3 weeks later, a certified letter from a law firm arrived in my mailbox. My parents were threatening to sue me to get their belongings back. I forwarded it to my attorney. He called the next day, barely able to contain his laughter. "They don't have a legal leg to stand on," he said. "I'll send them a response outlining your documentation and suggesting they drop this before they rack up more legal fees they can't afford." The legal threat seemed to end there. A month later, my cousin Lena called me. She had found my new number and was the only relative I had ever had a cordial relationship with. "Alice," she said gently, "I know there are two sides to every story, but I have to ask, did you really clean out your parents' house while they were on vacation?" "I took back the things I bought over the years," I said. "Everything I removed, I had paid for." There was a long silence. "How much stuff are we talking about?" she asked. I gave her an approximate breakdown. Another long pause. "Wow, Alice, I had no idea you bought so much for them. They never mentioned it." "Are you kidding?" I said, my voice rising. "They've been telling everyone I stole their things out of spite because I wasn't invited on the trip. They made it sound like I took family heirlooms and wedding gifts. I left everything that genuinely belonged to them," I said. "Every family photo, every piece of jewellery, every item of sentimental value. I only took things I had receipts for." Lena was silent for a moment. "You know what? Good for you. I always wondered why you kept giving them money when they treated you like crap." The conversation gave me hope that not everyone would see me as the villain. 2 months later, Clara called from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Alice," she said, her voice small and unlike the fiery tone of her voicemails. "Please don't hang up." "What do you want, Clara?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I got a job at a marketing firm. Entry level, but it's a real job with benefits." "Congratulations," I said. "I wanted to apologise," she said, her voice cracking. "I never realised how much you did for us. I knew you helped out, but I didn't understand the extent of it until everything was gone and Mum and Dad couldn't replace any of it. They're really struggling, Alice. Dad's talking about taking out a loan for a new refrigerator. Mum's been doing laundry at the laundromat because they can't afford a new washer. They were doing it before I got involved," I said simply. "They'll figure it out." "I know you're angry and you have every right to be, but couldn't you at least help with the basics, just until they get back on their feet?" There it was, the apology, followed by the demand for money. "No," I said flatly. "But Alice, I spent 12 years being your family's financial safety net," I said. "For 12 years I made sure everyone else was comfortable while I was treated like I didn't matter. I'm done." "So that's it? You're just going to abandon us?" "Clara, you're 25 years old with a job and no major expenses," I said. "Mum and Dad are in their 50s with their own income and a partially paid off mortgage thanks to my contributions. You're not being abandoned. You're just not being subsidised anymore." She hung up without saying goodbye. 3 months later, my high school friend Anna, who, to me, had been talking to my mum at the supermarket, asked to be my Facebook friend. "Your mum seems to think you had some kind of breakdown and moved away on a whim," she messaged me. "She's asking people if they know how to contact you because she's worried about your mental health. Just thought you should know what story she's spreading." I thanked Anna and updated my privacy settings. It was my family's right to twist my story into one where I was an unstable daughter who had a breakdown. The people who mattered knew the truth. I had been thriving in my new life for 6 months. My career was taking off. I had made genuine friends who liked me for who I was, not what I could provide. I started hiking the beautiful Oregon mountains every weekend. I was able to save money without feeling guilty and bought a new car that I chose for myself for the first time. I also started dating someone I met in my hiking group. Ben was a kind software developer who shared my values of financial prudence and open communication. Even after I gave him the condensed version of my family's history, he didn't try to convince me to make amends. He simply said, "Sounds like you made a healthy decision," before moving on to talk about our weekend plans. His reaction was exactly the kind of validation I had been hoping for. "Lena called me again last month. I wanted to let you know," she said. "Your parents are planning to drive out to Portland to surprise you for your birthday." I felt numb. How did they get my address? "I don't know," she said, "but they're convinced that if they just show up and talk to you face to face, they can convince you to come home and work things out." "Lena, I need you to understand something. I don't want to work things out. I don't want them to visit. I've built a new life here, and I'm happy for the first time in years." She quickly said, "I understand, that's why I'm warning you. Maybe you could go out of town that weekend." I didn't take any chances. I called my attorney, who promptly sent a cease and desist letter warning against harassment and forbidding them from contacting me or visiting my home. I also alerted the front desk of my apartment building and enhanced my security system. My birthday was quiet and peaceful. They never made it past the building lobby. That was 2 weeks ago. I haven't heard from anyone since, and I hope the message has finally gotten through. The silence has been both comforting and unsettling. After years of constant communication, calls for money, texts about family obligations, emails with links to things Clara wanted me to buy, the total lack of contact feels strange. I find myself checking my phone more than usual, not because I'm hoping to hear from them, but because the unusual quiet makes me nervous. To fill that void, I've started new pursuits and relationships. My week now revolves around the hiking group, and I've joined a book club. I'm finally taking a photography class on weekends, something I'd always wanted to do, but never made time for while putting out other people's fires. Ben has been incredibly supportive through this adjustment, and I haven't burdened him with the details of my family problems, but he seems to understand. It's a breath of fresh air to be with people who know me as Alice, the software engineer who loves mountain trails and craft beer. Not as Alice, the family ATM with complex guilt issues. For the first time ever, I've also started working with a financial advisor. You can't plan for the future when you're always sending money to help others. I'm now learning about retirement accounts, investment strategies, and savings goals. It's embarrassing that I'm only opening my first individual retirement account at age 29, but better late than never now that my income is truly my own. The advisor was shocked when she reviewed my past spending. "You were essentially supporting a household of 3 adults on top of your own expenses," she said. "No wonder you weren't building wealth despite having a good salary." It's both fascinating and frustrating to look at the projections of my financial situation 5 or 10 years from now if I continue saving at my current rate. Fascinating because the numbers are quite large. I could buy a house outright, take multiple trips, and maybe even retire early. Frustrating because it shows how much money I wasted on people who didn't appreciate it. I've been concerned about how my family is coping with their new reality. Lena has provided infrequent updates, suggesting the transition has been difficult. My mum reportedly spent the first month or so complaining to neighbours about how let down she was by me, portraying herself as the unfortunate victim of a breakdown by an ungrateful daughter. Lena told me during our last conversation, "She keeps saying how much you've changed. You used to be so generous and family-oriented, and now you're selfish and cold. She seems genuinely confused about why you left." My mum's lack of self-awareness is on full display as she blames my changed character rather than the dysfunctional family dynamic that drove me away. Meanwhile, Clara has had to face the reality of being a grown-up with real bills at age 25. Lena said she's been complaining about having to pay for her own food and gas, and that she's having trouble getting to her new job because she can't afford to get her car fixed. She asked if you could help with the car, Lena said cautiously. I told her that ship had sailed. It's notable that even after everything, Clara still seeks external solutions to her problems. She doesn't know how to save money, look into financing options, or adjust her lifestyle to her real income. My dad, it seems, has taken a more practical approach, prioritising replacing essential items rather than trying to restore their old lifestyle. He's reportedly been working extra shifts to make up for these unexpected costs. Lena said he seemed somewhat relieved as if he knew they were living beyond their means but didn't know how to fix it. The comment lingered in my mind for several days. Was my financial assistance enabling my family's unsustainable lifestyle? Was I helping them avoid the hard choices that would have ultimately made them more financially responsible? As I reflect, I can't help but think of all the years I spent stressing out over their rent, utilities, and unexpected expenses. I remember sleepless nights trying to figure out how I would pay for an unforeseen bill or repair. They never had to worry about that because I was always there to catch them. They never had to say no to a purchase because they could always count on me to foot the bill. I had shielded them from the true consequences of their decisions because the burden was always placed on me. In trying to help them, I had harmed both myself and them. Sometimes people ask me if I miss my family or if I regret my decision. To be honest, it's complicated. Do I miss the familiarity of my family and the people who have known me my entire life? Occasionally. Do I feel bad for being firm and not letting myself be taken advantage of? Not for a second. What I've learned is that being related to someone doesn't give them a right to treat you poorly. I've learned that financial generosity means nothing without basic decency and respect. I've learned that my value is more than what I can provide. My new life is centered around my values, my goals, and my happiness. And the change is incredible. If you or someone you know is going through something similar, feeling like a bank account rather than a person, giving repeatedly without ever getting back, please know that you are not alone and that there are options available to you. No one has a right to expect you to continue supporting them financially, especially if they show no gratitude. If someone consistently treats you like an outsider and disregards your feelings, you have no obligation to be a part of their life. Sometimes, the most self-loving thing you can do is walk away. I have accepted the truth that my family's comprehension isn't essential to my happiness. I'm establishing new traditions with those who accept me with open arms. I am planning exciting trips to destinations of my choosing, with people who cherish my company. I have stopped supporting other people's goals and started saving for my own. And for the first time in my adult life, I have never felt more at peace. That wraps up today's story. Thanks for hanging out with me while we went through all that family drama. Kavemi here, signing off. Let me know in the comments what you thought about it. And stick around for more stories with the usual Minecraft vibes in the background. I'll see you in the next one. I'll